Clara rather suspected that they didn't expect her to speak their language, which was Harshek, from the south and west. There was no point in letting her future captors know how much she understood just yet, so she kept her face studiedly neutral. "This one doesn't look like she plans to cut you just yet, boss." "Well, that's something." She heard the sounds of a man moving inside the tent, the scrape of metal on metal as he drew a sword from a sheath. "Well, if I am going to die today, at least the weather is nice." The sky was clear blue, with only a few puffy white clouds. The air smelled of the pine trees that grew close around the road. Clara had been very close to death twice in the last month. Once the air had smelled of burning buildings, and once of sickness and unwashed bodies. Pine was certainly preferable. Oddly, the tent itself had a faint odor of whiskey. Clara wondered how much the inhabitant drank, if the outside smelled of it. A bold black sigil had been embroidered on the tent flap. A name, a rank, a ward against whatever misfortune might befall tents. And what might those be? Windstorms or stampedes or avalanches? This seemed like a great deal to place on one ward. Behind her, the leader of the oral war band shouted, "We bring the payment of victory." The man addressed as boss threw back the flap and stepped outside. There was a sword in his hand, much finer than the one she carried. He was tall and heavy-boned, taller than any of the men behind her, and he almost certainly expected to look down to meet a woman's eyes. That Clara had only to lift her chin a fraction to meet his clearly surprised him. His gaze dropped very quickly, however, to the sword. She dropped down onto her heels and held the blade out on the flats of her palms. She tried to make herself look as non-threatening as possible, head bowed, while she studied him through her eyelashes. His face was dark and seamed with scars, his hair black and fiercely curly, shot with gray at the temples. There were fine lines at the corners of his eyes, paler than the surrounding skin. Clara had seen lines like that in men who spent a great deal of time in the sun. It made him look older than he probably was, and he already did not look young. Nearly 40, perhaps. He looked past her to the band of men standing 20 yards away. "Now what do they want?" "They're not looking all that friendly, boss." "Thank you, Galen. I could not possibly have figured that out for myself." "It's what I do, boss."